She may be out. Is Sheeta now? Oh, boy.
Oh. God, yeah, what Tony said. WWE Fanboy here, who has in the past tried to invest into AEW unsuccessfully. But I did watch Double or Nothing, thoroughly enjoyed myself, and said I will give it 4 weeks to see if I can fully invest in the current product. So far, so good. I watched Dynamite and Collision last night, and you know what? While I don't view it as a perfect show, I thought it was good enough to keep me coming back. I was definitely more interested in this than I was in SmackDown last week, I'll tell you that much for sure. That said, let's look at AEW Dynamite last night. I have watched Dynamite in the past, but it's been about a year since I watched a full episode. Leading into Double or Nothing, I was watching Darby Allin matches, and I watched the Tommaso Ciampa match versus Mark Briscoe, but I think it was Mark Briscoe. But other than that, I've been pretty much blind to what was going on in AEW, other than what I heard on review shows like WrestleChop or saw things on the internet. The best part of the entire show to me was actually in the first couple minutes. It's when Will Ospreay sat in the doctor's office with Kenny Omega. And Kenny Omega is, and I don't know the full story behind this, okay? I do know who the Death Riders are, but now they're aligned with Will Ospreay, and I see Kenny Omega saying, hey, why didn't you come to me for help? And I loved Will Ospreay's response. He didn't say, F you, Kenny. He gave a real reason, because I could tell these guys are friends. He's like, you're never around, or you're not around all the time. And then Kenny Omega started getting a little defensive about that. And I'm like to myself, why are you getting defensive, Kenny? You asked him a question, he told you a reason. He wasn't judging you, because Kenny was like, I've got to do things different now. I got to mentally prepare myself. It's fine. He wasn't judging you, Kenny, but don't ask him a question if you don't want the answer. And then my favorite was just suddenly Jon Moxley is there the moment after Kenny says, just watch your back around those guys. And Jon Moxley's like, yeah, watch your back. That's good advice, which honestly, it is good advice, especially in wrestling. You don't know who's going to turn on you and who's not going to turn on you. But I love that Jon Moxley wasn't like, oh, this guy's just trying to turn you against us. No, he said, yeah, you should watch your back around us. We're dangerous. He also said, yeah, we all have skeletons in our closet, which, yes, they do. One of the few times that I did try to get into AEW, I remember Kenny Omega running away with the AEW title to TNA. So, yeah, Kenny, you're not a saint. So I really liked this segment. Kenny was showing compassion and worry for his friend, but Will Ospreay was like, yes, it's cool, thank you, but I gotta do what I gotta do. And then Jon Moxley is just like, the devil on the shoulder, and he's not pretending to not be the devil. He's like, I'm a devil, but I'm telling you the truth at the same time. And it followed up with The Jet. Now, I only seen one The Jet matchup, and that was against Darby Allin a month ago or something. And I liked that match, but I really liked the character, The Jet. Really, really liked it. And it was great that they closed the PLE with it, and then they opened with it here. We didn't have to wait all night to see what the Jet was going to say. No, we just saw it right now. I was a little critical of ending the PLE with Jet turning like he did, but maybe it was the right call because we had Darby Allin out the entire show because he was selling his injuries, and I believe that was the right call because he's had week after week after week of just being put through the ringer. So probably the right call that Jet turned at the PLE so we could have him open the show and just get this ball rolling. Really liked it where he was just like, yeah, I told Darby he needed to win. Just, you gotta win, dude. And he remembered a conversation that Darby said, you gotta seize the moment or something like that, And so he said, you lost. I seized the moment. Made perfect sense within the world of wrestling. Now, Speedball Bailey came out. I know Speedball Bailey's a great wrestler. However, as a character, I wanted to see the Jet beat him up. I am not a Speedball fan. That might turn some people away, like, oh, you can't be a wrestling fan if you don't like Speedball. I mean, hopefully I'll see some more character work, but he seemed like a real big goody two-shoes, and I know that's probably part of his character. Whatever. It's okay if I don't like everybody that you guys like and Gales like. I don't like Speedball. I don't like Speedball Bailey. I like the Jet. I liked when the Jet beat up Speedball Bailey. Good stuff right there. I'm invested. I'll say the next match did bring the energy down some, and that was Chris Jericho versus Ricochet. I like Ricochet. I like a lot of the things that Ricochet has been doing. I really like how he has reinvented himself since WWE. In WWE, he was boring, all right? He had great moves, but he was boring. I'm a character guy, not a wrestling guy. And so I like Ricochet's character. And I love Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho, the Lion Tamer from WCW, is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. But the Chris Jericho I saw tonight, I wasn't really feeling, to tell you the truth. I think this match went on too long. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Chris Jericho is just old and should not wrestle. No, I mean, look at Edge and Christian. They're old and they are putting on banger matches. For whatever reason, I could tell that Jericho has lost a step or two. I think that if this match had gone 6 minutes, maybe 7, instead of whatever time it did go, it would have been a lot better. Always showcase a strength and not a weakness. At this point, Jericho might not be able to go 20 minutes, and that's fine. That's not an insult. The guy's been going for like 33 years nonstop. I don't blame him for not being able to go 20 minutes against Ricochet. So I would have just rather have seen a Jericho match, get that nostalgia pop, but make it a lot quicker. I know this is a feud and I look like the end of a feud, so maybe if I was a little more emotionally invested, other than what I saw in the Stadium Stampede, maybe I would have been a little more behind this match. Although Tommaso Ciampa coming out and destroying Jericho, that's interesting. That's interesting. I loved MJF. MJF tonight was great. I loved that he came out. He reminded everybody that he's a 3-time champion under 30. I love that he turned down Mark Briscoe because he's like, you don't have the look. You just are not it. Because later, he will accept a challenge from Rouge. Usually, you got that heel that's turning everybody down. It's because they're a chicken. But it doesn't look like MJF's a chicken, because if he accepted a match from Rouge, even though he was still cocky about it, but not accept a match from Briscoe, that shows that he legit, the character legit thinks that Briscoe shouldn't even be anywhere near the main event scene. That is kind of, and people are going to hate me for this, it reminds me of an Evolution Triple H. Not to the level in which Triple H was an Evolution, because there were some questionable booking decisions, but like, Triple H was a very much an elitist when it came to the main event scene back in his Evolution days, and that's the vibe I kind of got from MJF. And that's not a bad thing to be compared to Triple H, believe it or not, unless you're comparing him to current day Triple H. Don't be compared to current day Triple H. But yeah, MJF, he is in multiple feuds right now, it seems like, because Andrade called him out. The Jet was kind of eyeballing him earlier, said he was coming for him as well. So I like that. Darby Allin was putting people over by wrestling them. MJF is putting people over by putting them in a story with them. And so I think that's really good. And it really highlights their strengths, because MJF is definitely a character / story guy, but he's also a good wrestler, while Darby Allin is a really good wrestler with a splash of good stories. So you get what I'm saying there? I loved everything MJF does. And MJF is another one that throughout the years, even when I'm not watching the product, I kept tabs on MJF. A nice touch tonight was the Jungle Boy segment. Okay, so Jungle Boy lost to some guy. I can't remember who he was. All I remember is he was part of the Don Callis family, and he reminded me of Arn Anderson, to believe it or not, because just a very normal looking guy that is kind of high on the card. He had a championship belt, so I'm assuming he's high on the card. But what I really liked about Jungle Boy is the fact that earlier in the night, him and Luchasaurus were on their bus, and Luchasaurus just hit the brakes, and he was like, get out there. And Jungle Boy's like, we can't. And he's like, no, get out there, do it. And because they were in Philly, they did the Rocky montage. I thought it was funny. It was neat. It was just something to break up the monotony of just wrestling. It wasn't, a lot of people probably won't remember it, but to me, I'll probably remember that little Rocky montage more than I actually remember the match that they had. I wish, though, during the montage, they would have had him punching some meat and chasing a chicken, especially after Rouge had called Mark Briscoe a chicken farmer and MJF chicken S-word. Love the Edge and Christian stuff, okay? Christian is on point. This version of Christian might be the best version of Christian throughout his entire career, to tell you the truth. I'm talking TNA. Well, maybe not TNA. TNA Christian was actually really good, but maybe better than all of his iterations in WWE. I liked how Christian is still like a jerk and Edge isn't, and they're gonna do 5-second pose and he gives out the cameras, and it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. It's a nice little segment. And right before they do the pose, they get taken out by the dogs, I guess. I think they're called the dogs. And what I really liked about this is it wasn't just a beatdown. Anyone can just beat somebody down, right? Oh, we're beating you up. Now we want a title shot. But they went the extra mile. Then the dogs did a 5-second pose. That little story beat right there means everything. We stopped you from doing your 5-second pose, and now we're doing a 5-second pose over your carcasses. That made it into a story. Whoever the dogs are, I know one of them is Fit Finley's son, but I don't really know anything about them other than that. But suddenly I'm interested. I'm looking at these guys and I want to see more. One thing I didn't like was the women's match. For a while, I heard that the AEW women's scene was really, really good, and maybe I'm coming into it during a time when it's not, because I didn't really see much representation here, and the representation I did see on Dynamite was very quick. However, that said, the main event was actually a women's match, so maybe I'm wrong. We have Chris Statlander versus, I forget her name. It starts with an S-H. I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't know everybody's name yet. But that person broke a light bulb over Chris Statlander. This was a lights out match, and it was I was like, oh my God. It was intense. So I want to see more of this Chris Statlander. I knew of her before when she was an alien, and I kept asking during the live stream, why isn't she an alien anymore? And someone just said she came back and they just changed her gimmick. But regardless, she came back hardcore. And I don't know why they hated each other so much to warrant not just a street fight, but a lights out match. So I would like to see where Chris Statlander goes from here. And then Kyle Fletcher had an interview spot. I wanted more, to tell you the truth. Kyle Fletcher, he came out, he explained why he turned on Katesha. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And yes, it was great that he did, but then when Katesha came out, they didn't really do nothing. All they did was trade spots. Takesha came out with 4 guys, and then those people got in the ring, and then the Don Callis family just kind of left. I just wish there was more. That angle, at Double or Nothing, really was I was like, whoa, this is intense. This is cool. I want to see more of this. And then the follow-up tonight, I could have done more. So that's a critique right there, which is okay, people. It's okay for me not to like every single moment of it. And I didn't even hate the moment. I didn't even hate the segment. I just was really looking forward to this segment, and it didn't live up to the hype that I was thinking was going to reach based upon the hype that I saw at the actual Double or Nothing. But again, whatever, cool stuff. We did have the Radicals? Is it the Radicals versus Death Riders and Will Ospreay? I loved when they were going to the ring and Will was like, I gotta take this entrance over here. I forgot, doesn't AEW do 2 different entrances, one for heels, one for faces? Love that, by the way. And if I'm right in that, and Will Ospreay had to take a different entrance because he's a babyface and the Death Riders are still heels, that's a beautiful detail. I say all the time that the devil is in the details, and the details are what makes things epic. And if I'm correct in that, then that is a beautiful detail, and I love that. I love that. If I'm wrong and there is no separate entrances, then forget I said that. And I think that's it when it comes to basically the main things in Dynamite. So let's look at some hot takes, and we'll go from there. If, again, AEW content starts to flourish on this channel, I'll separate reviews and hot takes into their own videos, and then I'll also even do other videos like predictions and stuff. I'm only going to do a couple because I'm trying to keep the video under 20 minutes. We got 0S0S010. Kyle Fletcher will be bigger than Will Ospreay. Kyle Fletcher is definitely someone to look at. He's definitely someone worth looking at right now. He seems to really be hitting his stride with his character, but I will say I do like Will Ospreay, so I don't know, though. I don't know much of Kyle Fletcher other than he turned on Takesha at Double or Nothing, and he likes the color pink. TTJC says, the death of Jet Speed. I'm glad. I am 100% with the Jet right now. And 0% with Speed. Zorro says, I think AEW feels more alive than WWE and less corporate too. Absolutely less corporate. Absolutely less corporate. So, like, a lot of times when I'm watching the WWE product lately, I'm like, man, these matches are just way too long. They're way too long, and we need more stories. Now, I was watching AEW last night, and there were also a lot of long matches. And at first, I was like, what's the difference? Why are these matches feeling like not so long when they are compared to WWE? And that's because of all the corporate BS stuff that WWE likes to incorporate into everything. And they cut to commercial 10 times during a match, or the fact that everything just kept flowing too. Everything just moved. We went from match to backstage to in-ring promo to match to Jungle Boy in Philly to this to that, maybe a commercial here and there. But with WWE, it's they're walking into the building, we get a promo, we get a commercial, we get a backstage segment, we get a commercial, somebody walks out, we get a commercial, we start a match, we get a commercial, we continue the match, we get a commercial, we continue the match, you get what I'm saying? And then it's like brought to you by this, let's da-da-da-da-da. So the corporate thing, I think it's literally the corporate thing that is making me hate the long matches in WWE, because the show's not flowing. AEW's show is just flowing like a river, while WWE's show is like, I don't even know, it's flowing like a leaky faucet. I love AEW's wrestling says, oh my god, I love the women lights out match. It was bloody brutal and epic. Bloody is right. I was definitely squeamish during that match. Teddy Boy Ward says, tonight, May 27th, was my 64th birthday. Happy birthday, my friend. Go to your comment that you actually wrote. I'm going to sing you happy birthday on there. And I spent it watching AEW on TBS. It made me remember way back 30 years ago on my 34th birthday, I was doing the same thing, watching wrestling on TNT. It was WCW Nitro, the first night of a 2 instead of 1 hour format, when Razor Ramon Scott Hall came to the ring and said, you want a war? Oh, wow. Your 34th birthday on one of the most epic moments in all of wrestling history. LT says, I've not been watching AEW long enough to have hot takes. All I can say is I'm entertained from start to finish. Well, that's all that matters, right? That's all that matters. Roman Reigns Acknowledge Me says, I love seeing my favorite stars, but I don't know. I tried and I'm trying. I don't know why I can't get into AEW. My friend, let me say this. I remember back in the day, I did not like WCW or NWA. I tried multiple times, never got into it. And then one day it just clicked. But if you're able, come on Wednesday nights, we'll watch it together on a live stream, and we can journey into the AEW fandom together. Backwood Billy says, hot take, I don't think the Dogs Cope Christian angle was all that impactful. Since when were the Dogs in the title picture? Since today, I guess. You see right there, we have a different of opinion. Backwood Billy doesn't like that angle, but I really did like that angle. It's okay for us to disagree. I respect your opinion, Backwood Billy, even if I enjoyed it and you didn't. Weirdo LOLO says, my hot take is Tony Khan needs to do better booking the women's matches. He has a stacked women's division to give us just few matches. I think he needs to find a better balance. That being said, the Lights Out match was wonderful. That Lights Out match was like insane. Okay, but I agree with this statement from just watching this episode. We could have probably done more in a 3-hour show. But that said, I enjoyed myself. Was this the Dynamite / Collision that I was hoping for, coming off the backs of such an awesome show? I probably would have wanted it just to be a little more ramped up, but at the end of the day, it was still good. And I do want to thank all the AEW fans out there for how welcoming you have been. There have been some that have not been welcoming and just literally saying, how dare you critique a product when you're a WWE fan, and whatever. Every fan base has a section that maybe doesn't best represent the product, but for the most part, 98% of you have been super cool, super chill, and I thank you once again for joining me on this journey to see if I can too become a sicko. Boys, girls, see ya, bye.